Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. We're adding a new best guest to the mix when it comes to Dan Markel, justice for Dan Markel, and of course the imminent Donna Adelson trial set to kick off September 17th. That is less than 30 days away. I want to say 27 if I'm being precise, but under a month now for the countdown. Of course, Donna Adelson charged with first-degree murder and the conspiracy to kill her ex-son-in-law, FSU law professor Dan Markel. And tonight we're going to be looking at 5 of the most damning pieces of evidence against Donna Adelson. And since we're 2 attorneys, 1 FBI guy, and 1 neurotic human being, we'll probably do more than 5. I can assure you of that. And we'll take your questions too. Obviously, we're leaning into this as we gear up. We're going to be live from Tallahassee from jury selection on September 17th until a verdict is rendered, and we'll be there for all of that. I'm sure Jared Ross is going to pop in a time or two. With that said, let me introduce the best guest, Jared Ross, about as good a guest as you can get for this, because he's a high school acquaintance of Charlie Adelson. He graduated with him in 1995, even though Jared is really from New Jersey originally, my home state. He's a longtime friend of Danny Markel and Wendi Adelson. For full disclosure, Wendi just unfriended him on Facebook, and that is a badge of honor, I suppose. Jared is a 2-time graduate of FSU, having earned both his bachelor's and his Juris Doctorate from Knowles Central. Go Knowles, I guess is what I have to start saying, even though I'm really a Rutgers Scarlet Knights fan. I went to Brandeis, and best you're going to do there is like women's softball. So I'm rooting for guess I'm rooting for the Knowles now, Jared. Anthony Rickman.
Love it.
He's coming to us from Tampa Bay. He's an attorney with more than 18 years of experience in the areas of criminal defense. He's licensed to practice in Florida, D.C., and the middle and southern districts of Florida. He's represented thousands of clients with all sorts of serious criminal matters, including first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter, and the list goes on. And he is a graduate of the school that Professor Dan Markel taught at, that, of course, Florida State University. And last but not least, Sierra One Consulting's Rob D'Amico, who is from the Garden State originally, now lives in Florida. I guess this is where we all migrate to. He's done it all. He was in the military, and then he was part of the hostage rescue team, the HRT. Is that right, Rob? As part of the FBI. The guy used to fire 100,000 rounds of ammunition a year. And I just had lunch with him recently. He's jacked. He's strong. And Steve Cohen and I were with Rob D'Amico. And, of course, I always ask these guys, I asked them, what do I do if there's a shooter that comes in here? Steve and I were tripping over each other to get to the exit door and pulling each other's shirts down and stuff to try to get there faster than the other. Rob D'Amico said, and I quote, "Oh, there's kids here. I don't leave." So what would you do? You don't have a gun. He said, "I will take this glass. I will throw it at the shooter. I'll pick up the remaining shard, and then I will jab him in the jugular." So that's his mindset. Everyone's got a different mindset, but I got to admire it. So without further ado, we are bouncing into this. Jared Ross, you've been with us the longest, especially on this case. What are you anticipating? I mean, it's less than a month now. Donna's in a hot seat. Her son, Charlie, just convicted. What are you sort of anticipating in this under 30-day mark to the trial?
I think there's going to be a whole lot of familiarity for those of us that have been following the case for a while. I don't think you're going to have too many surprises as far as who testifies, what evidence we see. I think it's going to be a very similar story on both the prosecution and the defense side. I think we will see a lot of the same evidence that was brought in the original trial with Sigfredo and Katie, and then again Katie's second trial, and then Charlie's trial, with a little bit more nuanced toward Donna. And then I think you're going to see that same ridiculous double extortion theory as the defense, with a twist of she was just, good mommy trying to help her son. So, and then I expect the outcome to be the same, which is a conviction.
Mm. Rob, I'm wondering how you take this comment from Brianna, friend of the show, always here. Rob D'Amico is kind of handsome. It's either he is or he isn't. That's very handsome. What are you talking about? Anthony, to you, first time on the show. Very happy to have you. A very accomplished attorney out of Tampa Bay, which I was just at with my beloved mom and family. And I got to ask you. I mean, obviously, you went to Florida State. Did you know Dan Markel at the time? Was he
so? Dan was coming in when I was going out. I graduated in 2005. He was coming in 2006. I did my focus in criminal justice, and quite frankly, I wish I did have him as a professor, but I didn't. A lot of my friends did. A lot of my colleagues did, and they loved him. They had great things to say about him. Although I never studied under him, I just his reputation, everything he brought to the university was great, and I just wish I had the opportunity to study under him.
Yeah, and I got to ask you, I mean, what has you interested in this case? Obviously, you have the FSU tie. You're an attorney. Is there something that kind of jumped out at you? Obviously, there's a lot of crazy that goes on in Florida. I don't need to tell you that.
I mean, this is Florida, right? This case is Florida. I mean, when you look at all of the moving parts, the motive, the opportunity, everything that happened, almost like the wet bandits from Home Alone, the things that they did to get themselves in trouble. I mean, there's just so much going on that, as a criminal defense attorney, the first thing you tell your client is stay off the jail phones. Stop talking. If you think you've done something, just don't do it. And these, the Adelsons brought themselves back into the picture by their own actions. And then you top it all off with this big consciousness of guilt argument that they're going to make for Donna Adelson. And it's going to be a very tough case for her to overcome at the end of the day.
I mean, to me, that boggles the mind just about as much as anything. The fact that this family, I don't know how much financial means they have currently, but they had a lot of disposable income. I think they still do. But the fact that they bought that one-way ticket to Vietnam via Dubai is, I guess, perplexing to say the least, because that, as Anthony just suggested, is going to be a strong argument for consciousness of guilt. Buy the two-way ticket and say you just were going there to clear your head. If it was a two-way ticket, I mean, there's really very little argument that could be made other than they were going on a vacation. I mean, I guess they've got, we're going to get into this. They've got accounting showing that they were putting down payments down on a villa, so that doesn't help. But Rob D'Amico, since we brought up, you're from Jersey, Jared's Jersey, I'm Jersey, Anthony might as well be Jersey, even because Tampa's, yeah. Oh, so there you go, New York. Rob, what is it? I mean, you worked here undercover for a lot of years. What is it about Florida that has these incredibly sensationalistic, multi-layered cases? I mean, Sarah Boone's coming up. She zipped her man into a suitcase and we watched him die. Crazy. I mean, what's going on here?
I don't know, but you're absolutely true. Like when everything that down in Florida, like you said, this is a typical Florida case. You have the poshness of them and their South Beach style. And then they're actually talking bad about the folks up in Tallahassee. It is a very different state between the two locations. But everything is like this down here. A bunch of the undercovers I was involved in down here, and I've played the hitman before. I always like those because they're quick. You don't do a lot of long time stuff like I did on Undercover Against a Mob. But they're all kind of like that. They all have this sensational craziness that goes on, and I don't know what it is. But they all come down to Florida.
Yeah. COE, can you help me? I'm going to put a comment up and just slide this up. We're going to get to this jury selection in a moment. There is Donna Adelson. I wish I knew how to lift. There we go. One of these years, I'll figure it out. But Armand Fence, back to Anthony on this. I know Stephen Webster is one of them. He was Dan Markel's post-divorce attorney. Why are there 3 attorneys on the witness list? They say that attorneys are not good witnesses. What's your thought on this?
Yeah. So when you're looking at the motive, right? We know that there were emails exchanged between Donna and Wendi as the course of the divorce was going on. We know how much Donna hated Dan Markel, how much she wanted him out of the picture, how much she wanted those kids to come down. So I anticipate when you talk about these lawyers, people related to this dissolution, potentially to talk about how contentious this dissolution was, how, Donna was trying to manipulate all our parties, her emails, we didn't know Dan himself filed that motion before his death, trying to avoid her having contact with those children alone. So at the end of the day, behind the scenes, the backstory of this horrible, tragic homicide is the fact there was a contentious divorce involving child custody. And that is going to be a potential highlight of the case for the government, like we saw in the other trials, where they're showing the background as to why Donna acted in this manner. Because really, at the end of the day, it's her and Wendi had the most to gain from Dan Markel's death.
Jared Tessis here and he's been following this case. Welcome back to Jared, who pops in for this story. Jared Ross, his comment, there's more evidence on Donna than Charlie. The bump, the wires, the jail calls, the fleeing / consciousness of guilt that we just talked about, the signature on checks to Katie Magbanua, the pre-murder emails, so much more. Do you agree with this, Jared, that it's perhaps an easier case to convict Donna than Charlie?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of evidence for both of them. One of the things that they had on Charlie that they don't necessarily have on Donna is the direct connection to Katie Magbanua. Yes, she did the checks, the sequential checks that, with Katie's name, and she signed them, but they've got Charlie on, wiretap after wiretap talking to Katie. They don't have Donna talking to her. I think there's significant evidence on both of them. So the one thing that I think, to the other Jared's point, the one thing I think is the consciousness of guilt they've got with Donna that they did not have with Charlie. Now you have afterwards that Charlie talked about he should have listened to his gut and taken a beach vacation, and we know what he was talking about. But certainly I think they had plenty of evidence on Charlie, and I think they've got plenty of evidence on Donna as well.
Harold Anything But Dull is back. Very smart, very intelligent, and he's all over this case. It's interesting how we have different cases. By the way, I promised Shanna Gardner tomorrow, but we're doing that story, another murder for hire, also out of Florida, Jacksonville. We're going to be doing that on Thursday. Anthony, you better read up on that one too. And Rob D'Amico, Shanna Gardner, doing that on Thursday. Tomorrow night, we're actually going back to Alec Murdaugh. There's a real chance that guy's going to get a new murder trial, which I just cannot believe could happen, but it's looking like it's a definite possibility.
I think they need to start an all Florida true crime network.
You know what? It's actually a brilliant idea. And Jared, you just gave me an idea that I'm going to talk to you about after the show, because my mind's all
there. We go.
Good idea. Look at this from Joe Poe. Can't believe the trial is less than a month away. Seems like yesterday that Joel broke the real-time story of Donna's arrest. We got a tip on this very show. I'm happy to say that, news outlets are always, they always want to be first. We just happened to have a tip that day that came to fruition. If it didn't, we would have looked like total morons. So it's always a little bit better to wait and be right. But we had some really good information that turned out to be correct. And Donna was, in fact, arrested exactly a week after Charlie's conviction. And now here we are. Black Widow in the Republic of Ireland, gifting 5 surviving the survivor memberships. Everyone loves Black Widow. Joel, your voice makes me crazy. Love the show. That's got to be in a bad way. I don't know, Johnny D, but thank you. I don't know. I hope it doesn't sound like, I don't know, nails on a chalkboard. Anyway, we're looking here at a graphic. This is all the COE. Stuff looks easy, I think, but the COE was working on this all night into the morning, building these graphics and gathering the information. So kudos to her. And Space Coast, of course, Steve Cohen booking the guests and the mods. But jury selection set for September 17th. Rob D'Amico, you've been called as a witness many, many times. You're not an attorney. But if you're picking a jury for Donna Adelson here, if you're her defense, this Tallahassee, she was bad-mouthing the town. The whole premise, the whole motive is that she did not want her grandkids living in, what she kind of described as hillbilly Tallahassee. I've been to Tallahassee, one of my favorite places, very highly educated because it's the capital of the state. But if you're Dan Rashbaum, if you're the defense, what kind of jurors are you looking for here?
from out of town. No, it's one of those things that it's a college town, and there's a lot of loyalty to, FSU. So I think that's even worse. Like the college towns are much more ingrained in that. And I think that it's going to be really hard to overcome, but they're going to have to, I think, ask some questions about that openly, if they can keep their mind, even if the person insulted them, can they still keep an open mind, is what they're going to have to go down. It's going to be tough because it is a very loyal town to itself. And I think they even get more because of university, and the fact that he was a professor at the university is just like tripling it up.
Yeah, this time around, though, they've got Alex Morris, who's the Tallahassee-based attorney, so that could help the cause. Rob, right back to you. This is your world. So the FBI, your old agency, had eyes on Donna and Harvey, obviously, and when they stepped on to the jetway at MIA, they were arrested. She was a week after the conviction of Charlie. Jersey Girl wants to know, if they flew to New York and tried to leave from there, would Donna still have been arrested? She says she would have left from a different state. I always say I would have paddled to Cuba, but would it have been the same conclusion if she tried to make a run from it from, let's say, JFK?
We would have known. They would have known where she was flying. I mean, that's what they put out. They go to the airlines and they're going to find out exactly where she's flying. So she could have bought separate tickets, individual tickets to wherever, drove to another airport, and they would have been having the same thing happening. But when they really think someone's fleeing like that, then it's a no bars of what you're going to do to make sure they don't get out.
Yeah, and this is the stuff that I personally love. So let me just follow up with another question. I don't mean to be rude to Anthony or Jared, but this is I don't know. This is the stuff that I geek out on. So Rob D'Amico, there was this week Charlie gets convicted, and then she's making these plans, and we've done a show. She's talking to Indochina Sun Travel, trying to get away to Vietnam. You, as the FBI, how are you monitoring her moves during that week? Are there guys, your former coworkers, who are in unmarked cars outside of her home? I mean, how are you tailing her? How are you watching her so closely?
Most likely multiple ways, depending if they have any search warrants up, on emails and phones. I don't probably think at that point, but yeah, you're going to do physical surveillance. It's funny. I'm actually out here in Utah helping teach some very special military guys how to, I'm role playing an exercise as a spy, and they have to surveil me, both physically and electronically. And I have to pick up, if I can figure out who they are and such. But I remember doing it in Miami all the time. Our tent sometime was so dark that I had to roll down the windows at night to even see out of the car. But it's one of those things. And depending on how serious it is, like you think she's going to flee, you could have 8, 9, 10 cars, because stuff that people do when they think they're being followed. We had mob guys that would drive up an off ramp and then back down and then go back on the highway. So you got to have cars stacked, so you don't get burned, trying to follow them that way. So definitely, if it was something they thought she was fleeing and they were just waiting to get the search warrant, they're going to put some assets on that. We have special squads that do surveillance. That's all they do. They have all kinds of, different cars, and they can do things with them so that you can't pick them out. And then you could have a case, whatever squad was working her arrest, they'd be helping out with what we call SOG squads, the special ops surveillance guys. So you could have a number of folks on watching her.
Do you think you're getting information like this on Court TV or on CNN no, you're not. You are definitely not. You're only getting it here on Surviving the Survivor. I love this inside baseball stuff. D'Amico, the next time you go to a place like Utah, I want to go with you if they'll let me, and we'll do a story on it if they'll let me. Anthony, to you. By the way, Tara Ellis, Joel, are you going to any of the trials? I'm going to be at Donna's trial from beginning to end. People in Tallahassee are so nice. Someone has offered up a guest home to me and Steve Cohen, which is just beyond nice. So I'm really looking forward to that. But Anthony, jury selection, obviously really important. In the Charlie Adelson trial, They brought in a guy named Josh Dubin, who's, a Joe Rogan guest, super high profile, charges $1 gazillion an hour. He picks juries, and his jury nailed Charlie to the wall. It doesn't seem like it should be that complicated, but it is a bit complicated. Same question to you. I mean, if you're picking a jury, and we are getting to the evidence in a minute, I promise, but if you are picking a jury and you're Dan Rashbaum or Alex Morris, that you want to be in favor of Donna Adelson, who are you looking for?
Look, it's tough. She's very unlikable. I mean, we know we got going. So it's an uphill battle, defense attorney, where you can't roll over. So, in a case like this, obviously we're schools in session. We're in Tallahassee. So, the first thing you want are people who haven't had a lot of exposure to the case. Now, with school starting, people coming in Tallahassee, you may get that type of crowd. People who haven't seen the Charlie Adelson trial, people may not know the background. So you definitely want to avoid people who have exposure to this case. But at the end of the day, who do you want? Is it somebody you want, maybe a mother, somebody who's going to say, hey, go to that theory that she's just protecting her son. Her son, believes he's being extorted, that she's just going along to protect her family. She had nothing to do with it. You want somebody who's going to maybe have that feeling that a mother would in protecting her son, not necessarily a mother who's going to go out and kill, the ex-husband of her daughter. So it's a tough case, but really at the end of the day, you want the least amount of exposure because of how much publicity of everything that's going on in the backstory in this case. When you look at the situation where you have a contentious divorce, is it something that defense counsel is looking for? People who may have gone through contentious divorces, but didn't act out to that extent. So there's different things that, you look for in these jurors, that you're not looking for the best jury, you're looking for the best jury for your case.
100%. By the way, if my beloved mother is in the chat, Carm, let us know, Carm, you're a licensed therapist. Who would you be picking as a juror in this case? Curious to hear what you have to say. And if you were a juror, Carm, how do you think you would see this? We'll get Carm on to discuss this one of these days. Crystal Rampali for Jared Ross. Do you think the jury is going to feel sorry for Grandma Gotti as a geriatric defendant? I sometimes read these comments for the first time, as I am right now. It makes me laugh. And convicts on a lesser charge or acquits her, thinking of that Curtis Reeves case. But, Anthony just said it. She might be a grandma. She's pretty spry. She's sort of not likable, but she has charisma. There is a fear, Jared, that she could put on the granny charm. Do you see that happening? You think the jurors of your hometown are just too shrewd and will see through it?
I think she's certainly going to try and put on the charm. I think we saw it in her last appearance where, she was kind of laughing with the judge and smiling and, trying to look normal. But the moment they start reading those emails and you hear her on the phone and you realize who you're dealing with, I just don't think a jury is going to be fooled. It's the same way they put Charlie on the stand and he tried to be Captain Charisma and, smile and, have one-liners and quips and things like that. And it's just not going to work. And Wendy's done it when she's been on in the witness box and she's testified. And, like when they were talking about her book and she's like, now you're just embarrassing me. Jurors are smart. And like you said, Tallahassee's a smart town. They're going to see through the crap.
Abby here saying hi. Abby's been helping a lot. The last comment was Donna's mouth is the best evidence. And she does like to talk. Jared, obviously I was up there over the summer. That's when I met you in person for the first time. Are people starting to kind of whisper about the trial now because it's so close? Are people kind of, offering their conjecture on what might happen, how things might play out?
I talk to a lot of people that know about it and know that I've, kind of been opining on the case. And so I would say in my circle, yes. I'm not so sure that the greater town is all that concerned about it because football season starts on Saturday. And that's really what a lot of people are talking about. There's a whole lot of people that are over in Ireland right now getting ready to watch Florida State and Georgia Tech, and they're more concerned about that than they are about this. But I do think it's starting, it's starting to build, and people know it's coming. It's not a secret, and it's going to be very interesting to watch how many people from the community go to the courtroom. Hopefully, courtroom 3G and not 3B.
Yeah, we're going to see if it's a bigger this courtroom, which is 3G. There was a motion for 3B. I love that Americans will do anything for football. There's breaking news tonight that you can look at from the New York Times that basically President Biden has warned people are preparing for a potential nuclear conflict with China and a couple of other countries. But FSU football definitely takes precedent. Until that bomb is landing, we're all about FSU football. Sherry Douglas here. We talked about this last night, Anthony, so I would just like for you to weigh in. Dan Rashbaum did file a motion last week. I forget the legalese, you would know it, but essentially saying that, they took 9, now 10 years basically to arrest Donna Adelson. It's unconstitutional that they were doing it with a definite goal in mind, basically allowing the first domino, second domino, third domino to fall, and that it's egregious on the part of the state. This is, from what I understand from other attorneys, something that they have to file in case of an appellate decision down the road. Is that right?
Yeah. So anything not filed is waived. So as a defense attorney, when you have a case where there's a significant amount of evidence, a very high profile case, a lot of the stakes are high, you have to file any motion you can. In this case, they're basically saying that there's an unconstitutional due process violation because they waited so long to charge her. And basically in this 10 years this has gone on, she's created more and more evidence against herself. So at the end of the day, she's actually prejudiced herself by continuing to engage in the activity she's engaging in, showing that consciousness of guilt. And look, it was a great strategy by the government. This was ultimately their intent, because as these dominoes fell, she helped the government build the case against her by her own actions, by her own words, by what I'm sure we'll talk about, her plans to go to Vietnam, a non-extradition country, her ultimate attempt to get on a plane, her conversations with her son while in jail. And ultimately the government's plan worked, because you look at it, what the government's going to do is the state's going to say, these two are inseparable. They're thick as thieves. Donna and Charlie are the same people as one. So in theory, yeah, you probably maybe want to try them together. But the way they did it, because they didn't have as much evidence against Donna initially, allowed them to gather that evidence. Ultimately, I don't think the defense is going to be successful on this motion to dismiss. And at the end of the day, everything that happened in this 10-year period is fair game to be used against her.
By the way, Anthony,
and let's remember, there's no statute of limitations on murder. So they could have arrested her, when she was 90 years old.
Yeah, good point there for sure. Anthony, do you happen to know Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know?
I do not.
You know, same neck of the woods, and I think you.
I know George Tragos.
Yeah, the father. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just curious. Him and I have a loving relationship, and he's been on the show, so I was just curious. So here's the key evidence. Rob D'Amico, coming back to you. Ned Smith's got a little crush. Ned is not a man, for those of you thinking she is, but she's got a little crush on Peter. The key evidence here: the wiretaps, the money trail, family text messages, Wendy's movement, non-extradition countries. Rob D'Amico, these are the main ones here, and then we're going to break them down one by one. Which one jumps out to you as being the most damning?
It's one of those that I always equate it to like painting a picture. You start filling in different things, and when you get that one point where enough of them paint that picture, but and looking through it, I swear some of it. One of the things was just her setting up the appointment from was it the TV repair appointment again? That was something that really showed that she was involved in it early on, and some of it is like could be after, like she could have, he could have done this and then she decided to pay her after, and that's how the checks got signed. But when you look at some of the things beforehand that tie her to the actual event, I think those are going to be really important in that to show that it was premeditated. She was involved in it beginning and not just trying to help people out and their family after, I think.
These are great questions coming in from Joe Poe. This is a Jared question. George is a great prosecutor. Obviously, we know that. Sarah Dugan has a softer presence. Jared, do you think she'd be a better match with sweet old Granny Donna and not risk offending the jury who does not know all the stuff about Donna?
That's a really good question. I think they both would do an excellent job. I think I'd kind of like to see how Sarah Catherine Dugan does handle Donna Adelson. I think we know we're likely to get Georgia cross-examining Wendi. She's who's done it the last 3 times, and I think that is strategic. So yeah, I think Sarah Catherine would do a great job and really come across in a really good tone against Donna. Now, I also think that it'd be great to watch Georgia against her because I think Georgia would just piss her off so much that she might snap. But who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like in the fight game, they say that styles make great fights. So
Yep.
maybe her style could be better. I don't know. But obviously Georgia is pretty formidable. Welcome to Sherry, a new YouTube member. Jane Brown. By the way, on our Patreon page, the COE is putting up a lot of the behind the scenes and motions that have been filed in this case. If you're interested in that, the COE can put up the link for Patreon. Penny Green gifting 5 Surviving the Survivor memberships. Jared, right back to you before we go to Anthony. I'll be at the trial. Hope to meet you, Joel and COE. COE's got to stay back and actually run the show, but I will be there, Penny, so come say hi. Jared, the wiretaps, the money trail, family text messages, Wendy's movement, non-extradition countries that she was looking to escape to. Of these, or maybe another one, which stands out to you?
I agree with what Rob said, that they all kind of build upon each other. But to me, I really think the most damning of it all is the wiretaps. Just the continued conversation, the continued talking about these things, especially after the bump. I really think that those are going to be very compelling evidence. But again, it's going to build on everything else that they have.
Yeah. The big question here to you, Anthony, is why are they going with the same losing defense? The double extortion jury was out 2 hours with Charlie. I think with dinner, to be fair, it was closer to 3. Yeah. But Anthony, are they kind of roped into this?
They are, because you have Charlie testifying in his own defense, and now the government's going to put him on the stand, and he's going to have the option of pleading the fifth to preserve any sort of appellate right, but he's already testified, so he's sort of stuck with his story, and that ties in Donna because as we talk about these main pieces of evidence, him and Donna are talking throughout the entirety of time. They're on the wiretaps. They're so close that she almost is stuck with whatever defense he raised because of how close they are and how much they're talking about the events. And it's not just like the wiretaps. The wiretaps is them talking, but it's, he goes and talks to Catherine, and then the next thing you know, he's talking to Mom. And you could tell that she's intricately involved in all the communications outside of those wiretaps. So when you talk about, these defenses, really, she's stuck with what, Charlie defended himself on, which is not going to be successful for her the same way it wasn't successful for him.
Yeah. Texas family lawyer here, wiretaps. It has to do with me and you. I think it was just the 2 of us. So sounds like a song. So breaking this down a little further here, let me pop this up and lose the comment. So following the money, Rob D'Amico, Charlie paying Katie McBanawa $138,000, followed by 44 checks from the Adelson Institute. For those who are new to the case, the Adelsons had a periodontal office, both father and son. Charlie, who's now convicted, both were practicing periodontists. $407 check, each signed by Donna Adelson for her quote unquote job. I mean, Rob D'Amico, Dan Rashbaum is going to have to make the argument that somehow she was employed at the Adelson Institute, which I think is fairly easy to prove was not the case. But how damning is this? They say you always follow the money trail. Here it leads you right to the Adelson Institute, paying off the middle woman here, who's also convicted of first-degree murder.
Absolutely. And it's not just one, it's 44 signed by her. It's everything that you want to connect it. So, like you said, the job thing will be easy to prove that wasn't at all, and her distance and where she was doing what she was doing. So again, it comes down to the money trail that paints it. This is just one of those things that just fills it in so nicely straight to Donna because she signed the check instead of having a regular process do it. Again, she did so many things that like are so obviously like wrong. If you're trying to do this, like you just don't know how they came to this scheme, thinking that they're not going to get caught, that it's not going to come back to them with everything when it gets connected. So many criminals are like that, though. You think even the smart ones, you're flabbergasted at the stupid things they do. Not that everyone does a murder for hire every day, so you have lessons learned from the last one, so to speak. But this still is just points right to her. 44 checks signed by her. How do you get around that?
Yeah. Neely here weighing in. The defense falls apart when Sigfredo Garcia and Katie Magbanoa, who have children together, were arrested. Why did Donna stay silent? It's such BS. That's another valid point, I think. Rob D'Amico, let me ask you a much bigger picture question, not related directly to the Adelsons, but you are the guy out there catching criminals and catching the bad guys. What is it about these types of people that think that they're going to get away with it? That, Charlie Adelson or Wendi Adelson, whoever it was, hatched this idea. Donna is obviously involved, and they believe that they're going to hire 2 hitmen from Miami Beach, and they're going to get away with it. What is the psychology in terms of this criminal mind?
I think it's when people just think they're smarter than other people, that they watch the crime shows and they know how to do it. And again, it's that attitude that they're superior and that they know better. And you see that a lot. It's one of those, like the real true ones, the serial killers that are out there that we don't know about, that are doing this a lot. But anytime you have a connection to the murder victim, that's the majority where it's at, and you're going to follow the strings back. But it's got to be arrogance to a point that they're smarter than others, and that we know how to do this because they watched a movie or two, or CSI, and they think they're going to get away with it. And they also think people aren't going to talk when they get jammed up. I mean, that's the big, like, you arrest someone on murder, and you don't have a physical, like, family connection to them. Guess what? They're giving you up in a second to reduce their sentence. There's no loyalty at that point.
Betty Majors in Alabama, Jared Ross, you don't get married or die during college football season. I guess the same thing happens in Tallahassee. One of my favorite.
I'll tell you a quick story about that. My wife is from Alabama, and when we got engaged, the first thing that my now father-in-law said to me is, "You're not getting married during football season." So, and I looked at him and said, "Do you even know who I am?" Of course I'm not.
This is I'm telling you, priorities, man. Ned Smith, Rob D'Amico catches Somali pirates. Joel catches COVID. Good point. Well taken. Anthony, this again, I mean, in your world of lawyering and creating defenses, establishing defenses and motives and all of this sort of thing, the money is usually what trips you up. Is this right here, these two things, Charlie paying Katie, Donna cutting these checks, are they just, pardon the expression, dead in the water with this?
Without a doubt. I mean, look, there's no valid reason why she's getting that much money. We know she's receiving more cash in that time period after the homicide than she's ever deposited or received in her, like, at least the life of her bank statements. We know she's got the augmentation. She's got the Lexus she's driving. When you put all of the money together and you follow the money, it follows right to the Adelsons. And now we know she's connected to Charlie. We know, his relationship with Donna. I think at the end of the day, this is a huge factor. And when you talk about a circumstantial case like this, where they don't have the smoking gun, there's no jailhouse admission, there's no recorded call, she denies having knowledge. So when you have a circumstantial case, when you're putting together, certain pieces to that puzzle, This is a big piece. And when you follow the path of that money, and where does it lead? It right back to the Adelsons. So yeah, at the end of the day, you talk about this money trail. You talk about the washed money that she received at the house. You talk about all this. It leads right back to the Adelsons, who we know had the means to do it. You know, they wanted to pay Dan Markel $1 million to have the kids go down to Miami. They took a pretty big discount to pay $100,000 allegedly for his murder. So we know they had the money, they had the motive, they had the means, and this just establishes that she received the money from them.
Yeah. Sheila Kelly here. By the way, Sadiq Farouk saying hello again from Lagos, Nigeria, lest you think we are not an international show. But Sheila Kelly here. Wasn't Harvey with Donna when they dropped off the washed money? Now, this is something that Dan Rashbaum is going to dispute. And this is part of that motion arguing that they arrested Donna so late because SunPass records and things don't exist. Dan has said that Donna and Harvey were already in transit when this money drop-off happened, so we're not going to really know. Jared Ross, the thing that I'm most curious about is I just can't get over like the literal laundered money. Have you heard anything more about this? Do we have any? I'm just curious. What is it? An issue where she just wanted her DNA washed away? Like, have we heard anything about why this was done?
I have not heard anything about it. I read someone had commented on a post last week that maybe they kept their cash in the freezer, but I never heard of that either. And so no, I haven't. And saw that comment. Sorry, I'm not Tim Jansen.
Tim Jansen is covering
I'll try and cut it better, Adrian, or whatever your name was.
Hey, I'll take Jared every day of the week, twice on Sunday. Alabama and Florida often marry each other. There you go, Jared. Do you know of any other Alabama?
Close.
Yeah.
I know of a lot of Alabama and Florida marriages. Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Nothing says Florida like literally washing your money, saying they're laundering your money. I mean, I actually I did some research on this to see why, and really it's because when you're doing counterfeit money, you want to make it look real, but this is real money. Or in a circumstance like this, they're trying to wash off DNA or evidence. It's stapling money, washing money. I mean, and then the arrogance of them thinking it's not going to come back to them it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, Anthony, what do you think was behind that? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out logically what Donna was thinking with the laundry. I mean, do you think it was a way to get rid of evidence, keep her hidden from the fact that she was handling the money?
I think she thought she was the smartest person in the room. And for her, it's the arrogance. It's I'm smart in this. I'm cleaning every trace of me off of this. I handle it. Maybe I'm going to wash it. I'm going to put it in the washing machine, and then I'm going to give it to her damp. I mean, it really, at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense, but sometimes, they're criminals potentially for a reason. They don't do the smartest things. So at the end of the day, I really think maybe it's just to get rid of some of the evidence, but ultimately washing money is not laundering money. So, yeah.
I hope she was wearing latex gloves at least.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Katie did say that Charlie wore latex gloves when he handed her the envelope, right, to put in her baby bag. So
yeah, you're right. I totally forgot.
And Charlie and Harvey are dentists, so I'm sure they had access to a lot of gloves. So it wouldn't shock me one bit.
Wow, that's wild. Aslan Ahmed here. Rob D'Amico, this is your world. There can't be three masterminds behind a murder. Simple. Some people don't get it. Charlie received life sentence for being the planner already. I have a feeling you're going to have a contrarian point of view here, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, family's a bit different, but you can never keep something between two people that aren't like family. And even then, it comes into a thing. And it gets to a point where, that's why the mob guys get rid of, the witnesses. Like, you go do a murder and then you're going to get murdered. I mean, it's just you're cleaning up the mess, so to speak. We are talking about following the money, and not to bring up the pirate thing too much, but one of the ways we tied the guy that we brought back was he had ransomed a German vessel, and his cut was a certain amount. We knew what it was. And when we arrested him, in his luggage, he had Hawala receipts. And Hawala is the way that they move money around the world in some of these other places. And all the receipts for the Hawala money equaled his share for the German vessel. And that's how one thing we tied him back. And it was very strong because it's an exact amount that he had gotten from that job. So again, it goes back to what people look at, and what makes sense to them is, okay, this is what she got for this thing. Like he said, she's never gotten that much money before. And it's just one of those things that points right back to Donna because she signed it.
From Jess, I'm going to toss this one to Anthony. The state was caught off guard with Charlie's defense. I think everyone was kind of like, what the hell are they talking about? They had, sorry about that, Dan Rashbaum, who's a very nice guy, by the way. They had lots of time now to dissect and tear it apart. How important is it now? Or just using the football analogy, you played this team before. How much does that help you in the second go round? I suppose it goes both ways for the defense and the state, but how much will it benefit Georgia Kappelman and her team?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, it's almost like when you try a case and you mistry it. And it's very hard as a defense attorney to try that same case again, because the government knows where you're going to go. The state knows your strategy. And if they choose this same strategy, the state's going to know where they're going to go with it. And they've had the time to look at the evidence. They've had the time to go through the text messages, the emails, the phone conversations. I think that's why we saw the computer dump and the search warrants for the cell phones, to be able to combat this defense if they raise it. And we saw in the first case against Charlie, the government did a very good job in their cross-examination. This is the first time you're ever hearing about this. This is the first time you're ever mentioning this extortion. And obviously the jury didn't buy it to the extent where they came back guilty in 2 hours with the dinner break. And in this particular case, now we've had almost 2 years to be able to combat this defense. At the end of the day, the government's going to be more than prepared for this defense. And it remains to be seen if really the defense is the same in this particular case. We think it's going to be, right, but they haven't really pinned their ears down and say, this is where we're going to go with our defense.
Yeah, and Dan and Alex Morris are smart guys. I mean, you can't take it away from them. And who knows? Ned Smith here, I'm not pulling it up because I want to read Jimmy's joke in a second, which is funny. But Ned Smith says, I'm still perplexed why Katie turned down her sweet plea deal. I mean, she had to get out of prison free card and didn't use it. That is just inexplicable. But she thought she would beat the system, I guess. Jimmy McNutty, old joke. Man sees an open seat at the 50-yard line at a Bama game. Asked if he can sit there. The guy said yes. It used to be his wife's seat, but she passed away. The guy asked why a buddy didn't come. He said he's at her funeral. He's at the wife's funeral. Priorities. It's like puzzle pieces with Rashbaum. Today's theme is priorities. From Annie K. I'll go back to Anthony on this one. Annie's a friend of the show, always around as a panel. See any way Donna can tweak Charlie's extortion alibi to fit some new narrative. Anything off the top of your head there, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's that she was courting her son. At the end of the day, that she wasn't involved in this. That this, whatever her son said may have been happening, may have been going down that path. She's doing whatever she can do to protect her son. Whether he's being extorted, she doesn't have knowledge of it. She's just there to protect him, help him as a mother, and she's giving motherly advice at the end of the day that she's not involved in any, sort of plot. And we could see a sort of hybrid of it to the extent where we don't know what she's going to say she knew about that plot. She didn't testify in the first trial. So, who knows to what extent, her attorney comes out and says she knew or didn't know about the extortion plot. So really, we don't know at the end of the day how they're going to, phrase it or where they're going to go with this defense.
The Jared, I'm always behind Jared, but the love is flowing in. So screw whoever said that. I don't even know. I saw the first part of that, and we will take Jared.
It's all
like
good.
I said, every day of the week. Jared is the man. Black Widow.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, Jared is the man. He's a super nice guy on top of it. Driving down Trescott Drive. So this is another piece of evidence among the five. Wendi drove out of her way down Trescott Drive and said she thought there was a tree down near Dan's house. Georgia Kappelman, did you call the daycare? Did you call Dan Markel? Wendi denied doing either. Jared, you live there. I drove by there. It seems inexplicable why she would be there unless she knew. How else? I mean, this, I think, could be her nail in the coffin with a future indictment. I mean, how else can you explain this?
Not only how else can you explain it, how can you change your story every time you give it? When she gave her first interview to law enforcement, she talked about, oh my God, I went by Trescott and I saw caution tape and thought a tree was down and turned around. And then it was that she had to do a 3-point turn, a K turn. And then it was, I didn't drive by Trescott. I didn't go anywhere near the crime scene. So she has changed that story every time she has testified to it. And it's clear she not only went by the Trescott house on the day of the murder within an hour, an hour or two of it occurring, but she went out of her way to do it. For those of us that live here in Tallahassee, and for those of us that remember where Mosaic was, which, Joel, it was where you and Carm did the book signing, where Hearth and Soul is now. It was nowhere near where she was going from her house. She went all the way down Thomas, or I guess she went down Centerville, but she went all the way down out of her way, past 3 to 4 liquor stores that she could have gone to get her bourbon, and then turned around and went back toward where she lived to go to her lunch at Mosaic. So it's just a complete, and it's almost as unbelievable as a double extortion.
Jared brought it up, not me, my book. If you haven't read Surviving the Survivor, it's available anywhere books are sold. It's Carm's story and Carm's life advice from the perspective of a Holocaust survivor, a licensed therapist, and the oldest active true crime podcast host in the country. It's dare I say, it's a good read, and it could change your life. So check it out. Good question here. Did Joel hear back? Yesterday on the show, I announced that I did text Dan Rashbaum. I did hear back from him. He didn't have anything publicly to say in terms of a comment. He did let me know he's working really hard, and I know that he is, and he's got an amazing work ethic. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and Anthony can back me up on this. It doesn't take, I mean, this is an extraordinary case, but you never know when you're going to end up in trouble. Couple of weeks ago, I was taking my kids, I think, to get ice cream, and some crazy woman ran out in the road, came very close to hitting her. I could have been arrested. You never know. And you just never know when you need a defense attorney on your side. And Dan is, he's doing whatever he can, but he realizes, I think, that he's got an uphill battle for sure. Rob D'Amico, back to you on this. Again, this is your world. This is now a potential criminal, someone that could be indicted. A lot of people think that Wendi is the ultimate manipulator and got everyone's, panties in a wad, to use Phil Waters' expression. And now she's driving on the day of the murder down the street, which is completely out of the way, as you just heard Jared explain, from where she should be. Is that, in your opinion, a sign of consciousness of guilt, that you knew something was going on?
I think so. But again, it's like you're painting. Is there enough to paint her into the knowledge beforehand? So it's definitely one of those things that I think does. But I look at it, and the juror's going to look at it differently based on the perspective of how they tie everything else to it. So I would say it's definitely one of those. I think there has to be more, obviously, in order to do that. Doesn't make sense, but not everyone does things that make sense, and a lawyer can just get in there and dig to it and come up with all the reasons, passing other liquor stores because they didn't have her bourbon. She knew this only one, this liquor store is the only one who had Buffalo Trace or whatever she drinks. I'm a bourbon guy, so I know those.
Bullet bourbon. Bullet.
Bullet. Everyone has Bullet. But again, you can make a whole bunch of reasons that could get one juror to question it. But again, what's the other part of that painting that's going to paint her into that guilty verdict?
Look at this. Ida Shaw, breaking news. Joel and Carm, Jennifer Lopez has filed for divorce from Ben Affleck. You heard it here first. Carm in my book, speaking of my book, predicted this well over a year ago. I guess it's not the hardest thing to predict, but she said that J-Lo, excuse me, is too good for Ben. Ben is too self-centered and a loose cannon. She predicted it in the book, and now the book's been out for 3 months maybe, and it's coming to fruition. Another reason to buy Surviving the Survivor. Another Jared is awesome. Let's move on to the next one here because we played this one out here. The TV code words. Anthony, Charlie, what did they ask for? This TV was probably about $5,000. They asked for $5,000 and mentioned an ex-girlfriend. What about these code words revolving around the TV? Anthony's shaking his head.
I just think it's so damning. I mean, the fact that she's talking in code, that I hear it all day in my profession. They think that there's that people like Rob don't know what they're saying, or people are the FBI that they don't know what a stack means or what this means. Look, everybody knows what your code words mean. Don't tell you, might as well just telegraph it. And the fact that she's trying to use these code words shows that consciousness of guilt. It shows that she knew what this was really about. It's about the two of us. $5 for the TV. Ironically enough, she says the TV repairman there the day of the shooting. So, you have all of these things that, show her knowledge, her criminal intent. And when you talk about that circumstantial evidence, this just weighs, and eventually it tips the scales, most likely to guilty. So when you hear it, it's not just the content of what she says, but it's how she says it. It's the fact she's intentionally using, code words, things that we see, the TV, what else they ask for. All of these things would lead to a juror to believe that she knows exactly what's going on, that her and Charlie are on the same page, that they don't need to actually say what it's really about because they both know what it's really about. And that's why you have code words. Code is when two people are on the same page and they are talking about the same thing without actually saying it. And when you look at the code that they're using, it establishes that they both knew what was going on. They both knew that they were in for something. And ultimately, they didn't know that it was law enforcement, but it definitely shows that they had knowledge what was going on and why they were there.
Anthony, would you, hypothetically, would you like a crack at a case like this? Would you want it? I mean, it's such a high profile case. Would you want the onus of trying to defend Donna Adelson?
This is why I do what I do. I mean, it's any defense attorney who wouldn't want a case like this probably should find another profession, because as bad as it is, at the end of the day, we don't build them, we just fly them. And in this case, the evidence is there. It's my job to try and navigate this evidence the best way possible in the best light for my client if I had this case. As bad as it is, as bad as it may seem on the face, there are things that she's going to have to be able to argue. At the end of the day, there is not that smoking gun evidence. At the end of the day, we know who pulled the trigger. We know that Donna is at least separated from the trigger man. We know that she didn't have any direct connection to Rivera Garcia. We know she really didn't do much communication with Catherine. So really, she's distanced herself some way. And I think the defense is going to distance her even more. She's a mother. She's a mother to Charlie. She's a mother to Wendi. She cares about her grandchildren. She wants her grandchildren like any grandchildren would, but she wouldn't go to the extent of killing the father of her grandchildren just because she wants them. And really, that's what, if I were to have this case, as bad as it may be, there is an offense to be had.
Rashbaum's calling Rickman right now. It's funny. Every time
I'm
lawyers,
not interviewing right now. So
Tim Jansen's actually on a murder trial outside of Tallahassee right now. That's why he has not been on. But anytime I hear guys like Tim or Anthony start like getting into their, I don't mean it to be demeaning,
lawyer mode.
Defense character. I'm like, oh yeah, I believe these guys. I'm gullible, whatever. I believe whatever you say, Anthony.
They would love you on a jury.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
when you get a jury summons, I got to pick that case.
Yeah, exactly. Rob, what about going back to this code word issue? When you're surveilling people or wiretapping people, I mean, is it a super common practice where they're talking about bullshit and you just sit there and kind of laugh amongst yourselves that they're trying to like pull one over on you?
Yeah, it's funny. Some of it's really like we have the FBI has an entire thing that breaks code, because when you look at some of the good ones on the intelligence side of things and spies and stuff, they actually do it right. But I would be sitting on a wire and listening, and they would, the guy'd be like, "Hey, I got to pick up 7 oranges," and the guy on the other like, "What?" It's like, "I got to get 7 oranges." And the guy's like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I got to get 7 kilos," And then from then on, like you highlight that clip so that now when they talk about oranges every time, like you have him saying exactly what it means. So you hear it all the time, and it comes out in trial. Like, yep, and we have so many tape conversations, and then you point out all the times they're talking about oranges, and they talked about 5 oranges, and they just went up and picked up 5 kilos of whatever, so to speak, or 500. If you're in Miami, 5 kilos is nothing. So there's just ways to put it together, but they all try it. They all think they're better. But there are some out there on the true intelligence side of things that get a little bit tougher on how they do it. But the criminals just make a mockery of it and usually slip up, and you got them once they say it, and then from then on, every time they say it, like this is what they're talking about, you just go back to the original clip where they say it by accident.
McSpunky, who I was calling MC Spunky for the first 9 months of our relationship on this show. I'm giving you the love, McSpunk. Thank you for being here. I haven't seen you in a while. You officially won a friend of the show trophy. Please send me your address on Discord or email Surviving the Survivor. We do have this was a COE idea. She got little friend of the show trophies. So what other show is going to give you a trophy? I don't know if that's good or bad for America that, that everyone's getting trophies these days, but nevertheless. By the way, in 7th grade, this is where people give me 1 stars because they're like, I just don't give a shit. Why are you telling me this? But this is my show. I host this show. I have a slight ego. I really don't, but I do. But in 7th grade,
we all have ego, Joel.
Yes. But listen to this. In 7th grade at Highland Park Middle School, I went for Halloween, for the Halloween contest as a fire hydrant, and I had my dog walking with me, and the fire hydrant had a sign that said, "A fire hydrant is a dog's best friend." And I literally had to parade around, and my dog sat on her behind, and I had to drag her through. My sister, who's very talented, made the fire hydrant, and I got a massive trophy that I still have in New Jersey for winning the 1982 something Halloween contest at Highland Park Middle School. That's my story. Heard on the wiretap.
Is that still to this day your best costume ever?
You know what? Carmel say no, because in Washington, D.C., I came up with I'm not a big Halloween. Sounds like I am, but I'm really not. But in Halloween, there was a big, it was like a contest, and I had my 2 girls were like 3 and 1, and were, as we all know, children cost a lot of money. So I went as an ATM machine, and I had money plastered all over them. And they were like 1 and 3. So I had no idea what was going on, but all the dads.
Was it wet money?
It was laundered money. It was very, Joel, you secretly love Halloween. Your costumes are insane. Your wife. Yeah. I've been a little lackluster the last couple of years, but of course this is another big one. And I'm proud to say I have met the Bump Man, whose identity will remain anonymous. Super great guy. He was in the FBI for 20 plus years. Did mostly undercover work. He promised me he's going to come on this show when he's able to, when it's all said and done. But heard on the wiretaps from Donna after the bump, I got some paperwork hand delivered to me. Does it involve me or other people, Charlie, the narcissist? Well, probably both of us, probably the 2 of us. You probably have a general idea what I'm talking about. Anthony, again, back to you. Game over again. I mean, you just have.
I think this is the most damning part of it. And look, it was so ingenious of the FBI and the state to do it. And even Charlie talks about it. He throw a grenade and all the cockroaches start scrambling. Really, that's what they did. They threw the grenade and everyone started scrambling. They started doing exactly what the government anticipated them doing. And when you talk about it, it probably involves both of us. and you have an idea of what I'm talking about, it shows that they're one and the same. And now you put Charlie up there, a convicted murderer, right? He's convicted of first-degree murder. And now she's admitting through this statement that she knows what they know what they're talking about and involved to both of them. This first phone call in the wiretap is really, in my opinion, the most damning to her. And then you have the meetings that follow, the off-the-record meetings that we don't have the recordings for. We know that he's then calling Catherine, and then he's calling back Donna. It further shows that they're just building that block to convict her. And, this is very, very damning to her defense.
I would agree with you. This is probably, the H-bomb of this case. Rob D'Amico, before we get to Bill Davis's super chat here, this is why I love having Rob on. I mean, how does this go down behind the scenes of the FBI? They're trailing these people. How do you make the decision to send this undercover agent out with the so-called bump, where he hands her this, fictitious piece of paper, and she really, it's like a fish chomping on the bait. I mean, she really goes for it. But how does this play out? How does it go down? How does it get executed behind the scenes?
So you really have to work with the prosecutors on this one and the case agents, and you're at a point where you're probably not going to get any more evidence, but you still probably need some. So how can you generate that to a point? And that's where a bump comes in, or sometimes you call it tickling the wire if you're up on the phone to do something to get them to talk about it. So you just have to look at it like, what can we lose if we do this and it goes bad? And then what can we gain? And you go back in the pros and cons, and then the prosecutors really be involved in this, saying, hey, this is where we have to call, we can't entrap, we can't do this. You have to stay very strict to how we do it, and then let them, like this one, it just worked perfectly. And they talked about this would be like a playbook on a bump going well, because sometimes they don't. They could say something, and me, like if I did something, I got bumped, then I would just go on the phone and totally talk about my innocence and how could this happen. And, again, because the statements are admissible because they're not in custody and stuff. So I would very much profess all my innocence if I got bumped, but I know the technique. So, but not all of them go right. And this one was just perfect. And it came out perfect on what she said. Like you said, she tied both of them together, admitting that what's on that paper, because they have that paper. They have exactly what's written down on it. And she's saying it's about both of us. And then they're going to show the jury, this is what was written on this note that she's talking about. It's both of us. So it's one of those things, like you said, it's very, it's very detailed, and it's just picture perfect on how they did it. So, but it has to be a whole discussion between the prosecutors, the case agents, and everyone else has to feel comfortable. You have to look at what can go wrong. Do you have enough? Do you just want a little bit more to tie some loose ends together? And this one did.
Yeah. And by the way, when I was speaking to Bump Man, is what I'll call him, great guy, he was telling me he was kind of upset because he was instructed or directed to be a nice guy, a nice bad guy. So he was very polite to her, where typically he was kind of a gangster, rough around the edges, but they went with the decision to be nice. They thought that they would just rattle her too much with too much of a tough guy attitude. So that was a little bit of knowledge.
I did notice that myself when I watched the bump, and I'm like, when you play a hitman or you play someone like that, you definitely want to be what they think they're going to be, like when you play a hitman, you want to be that guy that they think they're hiring type of thing. The movie Hitman's pretty funny too. I saw that the other day, because he does talk about seriously the what the people think they're hiring and how he changed the thing. But he was very nice, and he probably, like he said, probably got into her a little bit more, and that might have been a really good thing, because if he came off too hard and scary, she may have just like you say, got overwhelmed and just kind of flipped out, and they wouldn't get what they eventually got.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, even the conversation after the fact that Charlie has with her, and she's like, well, were they gangsters? Were they gangbangers? Were they Hispanics? And he's like, no, he was actually pretty nice. And,
yeah.
Like Rob said, that really worked out for him when he did it that way, as opposed to taking the opposite approach of, New York Mafia guy. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's a really interesting distinction to make and to decide that ahead of the time. I mean, hindsight is everything.
They may have had profilers work that to see what worked best, because that's, again, you're bringing everything in. You get the profiler in there and say, hey, what really is going to get her to do what we want? And they'll probably have a psychological profile on that, and they'll discuss it with them and say, hey, this is a better way to approach it.
Rob, would that drive you crazy? Because you're like, I'm an FBI agent, I know what to do, but they would.
When I went undercover against the mob, I was very I played a former military guy, but I was living on an undercover yacht and stuff, and we had meetings over there all the time. And I was very much like, as soon as they started talking dirty, since I wasn't my first role, I wasn't a mobster with them. I did security for the guy. I would leave every time they started talking dirty, because I grew up around mobsters, so I always thought that they would think an FBI guy would want to be in the room when you're talking dirty. Well, we had cameras and we had 8 mics in the office. I didn't need to be in the room. And it worked out to a charm, because I heard Boca Bob say, and on one of the tapes, say, hey, I like that kid. He knows when to leave. And it actually moved me away from being suspicious of being a cop, because I would leave every time they started talking dirty. So listening to people and stuff like that, just because you're an FBI guy, you don't have to be so what you think you should be. Sometimes it works the other way. And listening to people, especially like a profiler, says, hey, this is going to work with this person, you really got to listen to them.
This stuff is so fascinating to me. I mean, among your group of people, Rob, were there better? I mean, there has to be better actors than others in terms of undercover, right?
Dude, the undercover guys, when I went to undercover school, and I had already been doing undercover for a year, and I swear to God that I did undercover truck driving. I drove tractor trailers undercover, and the guys that ran that program, I swear I thought they were just truck drivers. The mob guys were so mob guys, I'm like, are these really FBI agents? Like, when you go to school and you're going against them, we had a guy who was a boxer, and he had the broken nose like you couldn't believe. And I'm like, he's an FBI agent? Our undercovers are some of the truly craziest guys out there. And they we had Jack Garcia, who's like 400 pounds. And he was an agent. And no one believed he would, and he did multiple Group 1, undercovers against Russians, Italians, all at the same time. He's got a book out, and it's just an unbelievable thing. So some of them really are incredible, and they're so calm and cool. I did meet a British guy that went undercover against the IRA, and this guy always said that how big of a chicken he was, and his stories were just unbelievable, because IRA, they don't play games. And some of his stuff was crazy too. So it is a truly interesting world.
By the way, I bet you D'Amico's a way better actor than Ben Affleck. Probably, maybe J-Lo will go for Rob.
I like a couple of his movies.
Yeah,
a couple of them aren't so good.
I could rip a few of his acting roles apart. I won't do it right now. But Bill Davis here to Jared. By the way, have the words "I chased Somali pirates in Africa" ever come out of your mouth, or "I went to undercover truck driving school"? Have you ever said those sentences?
Cannot say that I have. The only thing that Rob just said that I could relate to is growing up around some mobsters. That's about it.
Jersey, baby. Yep.
That's right.
People don't get the real Jersey. How do you guys think the mother, Jared, this one's for you, helping her son defense fits with Donna Adelson's first phone call after the bump to Charlie and her comment that the incident involved a matter that concerns both of us? I mean, look, if you have a guy like Anthony Rickman, he's going to make the argument Donna was being a good mom. She was there for her son. She had no idea her son was distressed, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be her absolute only argument to this, but there's so much more to it that you cannot, you cannot explain away. On the previous slide where it said, this TV costs about $5. And Charlie immediately responds with, they want $5,000? That's insane. So he obviously knew TV 5, immediately it was $5,000, not 500, not, $5. It was, they want $5,000. And again, she never mentions the name Katie. Not once does that come up. Says something about you and an ex-girlfriend. What does he do? He goes straight to Katie. They all know way too much for their own good.
I mean, look, as we talk about it, as a defense attorney, I look at this and, in looking at their defense is that we know that Dan was killed. We know that usually it's somebody related to family who's a prime suspect. Wendi said, my family, immediately, maybe somebody in my family. We know Charlie had joked about it. As a defense, what they're going to say is that, hey, look, we anticipated this happening. We know that people knew our family had money. We knew eventually somebody would come to us and threaten us and squeeze us. And here it is. And Charlie, how do we deal with it? Because it deals with you, it deals with me. We're all a family. And they're going to try and play that up to the extent where it's not because we knew what happened, because we knew this was going to happen, and it did. We were being extorted. And really, that's how they're going to phrase it.
And again, my response to that would be, and that's exactly right. That's all they can say. But my response to that would be, even if that were true, later on, a couple weeks later, these two hitmen are arrested. And then in October, Katie is arrested, and you never go to the police, not once. At no point do you go to the police and say, okay, now that the people that were extorting us are behind bars, let me tell you what happened. And they never do it.
Yeah. Ann Arbor, go blue. Why would you chase a defense that failed miserably? I think Anthony was talking about this early on, that they're basically kind of roped into it. COE, you put this one up. I'm sorry, I had another one. I didn't realize there was two more. So we'll go through these pretty quickly. What they didn't do, Charlie, if it's a threat, you go to the police. I don't think that's a good idea. Anthony, innocent people generally go to the police.
They do. And at the end of the day, this is just another piece of damning evidence. As a government, you're showing that consciousness of guilt. You're not going to the police because the police are going to pull that string. And when they pull the string, it's going to unravel. And it's going to unravel in a bad way for you and your family. But at the end of the day, what Donna's going to argue is that, I didn't think it was a good idea because I didn't want to subject myself to this. I didn't want to get killed. I didn't want to get extorted. If I go to the police, then we can all be in jeopardy. When you don't have much, really, it's all you can really go on in a case like this. But is it going to carry the day? I don't think so. But she is going to have an argument of why it wasn't a good idea. But the fact that she's saying, as Jared said, you had all these opportunities to go to the police. Go to the police after they're all arrested. Everyone's round up. Hey, go to Rob and say, hey, I want to get a witness protection, whatever it may be, and go get the help that you need if you're being extorted. Her statements, I don't think it's a good idea. All goes again to the initial comments of this being involved in the two of us and her knowledge of what happened, her guilt in what happened.
You know what, Anthony, I had a question for you earlier. When Rob was talking about the bump and the fine line between entrapment or not, legally, I don't want to put you on the law school spot, but what defines entrapment? I mean, how is this not entrapment? I guess. I mean, can Dan Ratchbaum make the argument that it was?
No, it's not entrapment at all, because in entrapment, it's the actual offense itself. When you're having a circumstance where you have the government trying to get a confession or trying to get a statement, the government can do what they want. They can lie. They can pretend to be somebody they're not. That's not really entrapment. When we talk about entrapment, it's forcing somebody or giving someone the mental state to commit a crime that they're not predisposed to committing, and then providing them with all the tools, all the instrumentality, and the ability to commit that crime when really they wouldn't have committed that crime. In this case, we're not really talking about entrapment as a defense because the crime had already been committed back when Dan was killed. The crime had already committed when she allegedly set up the murder for hire and the plot to kill him. What they would argue is that her statements to law enforcement is more of a coerced type of statement. It's an acquiescence to what they're doing, as opposed to a true admission of guilt or a true feelings of consciousness of guilt. So it's not really entrapment in those aspects. It can be used against her. And really it goes to the weight of the evidence, not the admissibility of it coming to be used against her at all.
Jared, proud of Anthony, FSU Law School, breaking it down very nicely. Ann Arbor here.
Hey, that's a top 50 law school education right there.
There you go. There you go. Piece by piece, maybe it's a defense, but altogether it's obvious her involvement. I would agree with that statement. Piecemeal, it's a little tougher, but when you put it all together, for sure. Donna's going down, says Deb. So the final slide here, the final piece of damning evidence. Rob D'Amico, to you, search engine history. She's looking up non-extradition countries, and she's doing it at a frantic pace, especially in that week after Charlie is convicted. This whole emergency visa, getting it rushed to her, the one-way ticket to Vietnam, and paying off. You can't own a property, I have found out, in Vietnam, but you can rent there, and that's what she was doing. They had put down over $100,000, I believe, or that's what the balance in total was, over $100,000 for a villa in Vietnam. Rob, you can't just say you're going there for vacation. Why the hell else are you going to Vietnam that does not have extradition?
Yeah, and not buying a round trip ticket. Like you've spent all this money, just buy a round trip ticket and say, yeah, I was planning to come back then. You just don't use it. So again, it's one of those things that they don't think they're going to get caught. They think they're the smartest people in the world, and that this isn't going to happen. And the fact that this is just icing on the cake. It's one of those things that they didn't need this. I don't think to get the guilty thing. It's just one of those that on top of everything else, then you throw this out there. And I think it's very powerful to watch the video of the arrest. Again, it's one of those things that when you're seeing certain things, or like the wiretaps are always very strong because you're hearing that person's voice say those things. It's a lot different than a witness saying like, oh, I saw this and I heard that. So I think it is very powerful, but I don't think they needed it. It's just one of those nice ones at the end that, like, yeah, it's icing on the cake, or as or something else on dessert, so to speak.
Jane Fonda was infamously dubbed Hanoi Jane. Well, now you got Hanoi Harvey, and I guess Hanoi Donna as well. The guy who was probably chasing pirates through Hanoi, Rob D'Amico. He is the head of Sierra One Consulting. He gave us service in the United States military. Oh, the money drop. I forgot this slide. We'll get to Rob on this as I introduce Rob, or outroduce Rob right now. Rob obviously was in the FBI, did amazing things there. Want to get your final thoughts, Rob, but this last slide, the money drop, July 18th, 2014, Donna to Charlie. We talked about this a little bit. Basically said they're outside your house with the laundered money. That is going to come into play. Dan Rashbaum is already making the case that she was not physically at Charlie's house, but there's no way to prove it one way or the other. This, I don't think, is as strong as, the consciousness of guilt, taken off to Vietnam and the others. Your thoughts on this particular piece, Rob, and your final thoughts?
It's one of those, again, it's hard to take them all apart because we know all this at the time, and it's like the picture's just filled in and it's painted so well. But if you take one thing out like this, I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it's as strong as some of them. And I think that's based on people's perception of certain things too. And again, when we talk about a wiretap, it's her voice saying these things, and we just say it. So this I don't think is strong, but I don't think it's hard to take apart because it's painted so well. And to take things individually, and you have to look at the jury's perspective on how it's going to be presented that way. And do they know anything about the case? Because I think it'll be hard to get 12 people that don't know anything about it, but how much do they know, and how well does that prosecutor paint this into it? as we saw in like the Karen Reed trial, some of it was just so badly presented. It could have been more powerful, and it wasn't presented well. And I don't think we're going to have that with this one, because again, they've already done this, so to speak, once. So it's like you get to play it again. I think is very powerful.
Random question, but I like it. Joel, how are you feeling about Phil Donahue? I was super bummed to read that. I did not know him, but by all accounts, an absolute gentleman, married to the same woman for over 40 something years, to Marlo Thomas. I actually heard a soundbite with Oprah from like the 1996 Broadcasting Awards where they were honoring Phil Donahue, and she said there would never have been an Oprah without a Phil Donahue. He really paved the way for her, Geraldo Rivera, all these talk show hosts. The reason I do that at the end, it's my little homage to Geraldo. I know his producers, and I used to, I would never say work with Geraldo, but we'd be covering the same stories at the same time, and then we'd all grab lunch and stuff. And he's, a lot of people like to make fun of Geraldo, but he's actually a super cool dude, down to earth, and always very, very kind to me. Always willing to talk, always willing to help out. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to get him on the show, which I think is doable. The guy's still, he's 80 years old, that guy, and he's going super strong. But Phil Donahue, dead at 88, big loss, but he left a big legacy. Another man who's going to leave a legacy behind him, Anthony Rickman, first time on the show, Tampa-based attorney, a graduate of FSU. He's got a strong interest in this case, and just some of the sound bites he was riffing off of. It sounds like he would be a Class A defense attorney for Donna Adelson, but this go around, it's going to be Dan Rashbaum and Alex Morris. Anthony, question number one, will you come back?
I'd love to come back. It's been great, great being on the show. Awesome.
Second thing, your final thoughts. We're under a month now. What do you think the defense is up to? What's the state up to? And your thoughts?
Look, defense is doing the best they can to prepare a client. It's tough. She's in custody. So, having a client in custody also makes it real difficult, because you're trying to work at your office. You're trying to get the case prepared. And at the same time, you got to go see your client, prepare her. So they're doing a lot of preparation. We're going to see motions. There's motions that are pending. We're going to see motions in limine to exclude certain evidence. Motions suppressed. We still have to see that motion to dismiss that's going to be litigated. And at the same side, the government's getting ready for trial. And the government's preparing their witnesses. Their witness list is huge. They, just like the government, the defense had their opportunity to see the government's case, the government's had the opportunity to see the defense's case. So really, they're going to war again. The same combatants, the same people going to fight. And at the end of the day, when you look at Donna Adelson, it's a defendant who has motive. She has the means, she has the opportunity, and she has everything to gain by having Dana Markel out of the picture. At the end of the day, the government's going to present that as the case, and it's up to the defense to make the distinction of a mother who's just wants to take care of her son and look out for her son versus a criminal mastermind for a hired hit. And ultimately, I think the jury is going to decide the same way they decided previously, and ultimately, she's probably going to look at life in prison.
Hey, Rickman, if you want to drive a little northeast, maybe you come for a day or two of the trial, and we'll do a live show from there. I would love it.
That sounds great. I'm going to come up on a Saturday to watch my Knowles, and we'll see if there's a Friday.
There you go. By the way,
two home games right in between.
We do. So. Yeah, Memphis and Cal back to back. So I'm definitely going to be there.
Let's do it. No pressure on Jared Ross, but he did promise me he's taking.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I cannot wait. Look at this from Ned Smith. She's got the crush on Peter Tragos. He wants to come on your show. He's been on before. The lawyer, I'm like, what's the comparison? I'm slow on the brain uptake right now, but it's like comparing Ohtani, the pitcher, the LA Dodgers pitcher, to the Little League World Series pitcher. Tragos in a different league than me. He's got gazillions of followers. He went to law school. He's got the long locks, handsome. But don't worry, Tragos. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you. I'm going to catch you and Joe Rogan before it's all said and done, before I'm 93 years old. Last but not least, Jared Ross. He is a high school acquaintance of Charlie Adelson. He graduated with him in 1995. Longtime friend of Dan Markel and once Wendi Adelson. Went to FSU undergrad, FSU law, and is an all-around great guy. Your final thoughts, Jared?
Yeah, just first, it's always great being here with you, Joel. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed being here with Rob and Anthony. A lot of great insight, so appreciate that. And just everyone, especially as we're getting closer to this trial, just keep thinking, keeping the Markels and Danny and the whole family in your thoughts. We always talk about the Adelsons, and that's because that's what is going on is the trial of another Adelson. But at the end of the day, this is all about Danny. This is all about Danny Markel and the legacy he left and the legacy he couldn't further. So that's what I always think about. That's why I have come forward. For a long time I did not want to, and then our mutual buddy Dave Ehrenberg kind of suckered me into it. And as it would be, you and I ended up on Court TV together, and here we are. So. And I had someone ask it at one point, what's this book right here, by the way? That's my 1995 JP Taravelli yearbook. So I just kind of keep that there. And, Charlie's in that book with me. So
Jared, do me a favor.
Kind of a little Easter egg.
Take a little picture of that picture, and I'll put it on our Instagram, Surviving the Survivor, Charlie Adelson's high school
text it
picture.
to you.
And I'm just going to take an educated guess that you may have had more hair in that high school photo.
A lot more hair. Yeah, I had a fro.
Send me that.
I was a lot skinnier and had a lot more hair.
Send me both photos. I'm going to put them on Instagram, Surviving the Survivor, and you can follow me on Twitter at Podcast STS. We're back tomorrow night, back into the madness of Alec Murdaugh, and then Thursday, another case that I'll get all these guys on, the Shanna Gardner case out of Jacksonville, eerily similar to this case, a murder for hire, custody battle, husband ends up dead. A lot of craziness, as we discussed, in the water here in Florida. Thank you for being here. Love you, America. Love you, Utah. Love you, Florida. Love you, Tallahassee. Love you, Tampa. And it is all about justice for Dan Markel. Guests, do me a favor, stick around 1 second.